Hello, Year 10. Welcome to Lesson 2 on viewpoint writing. Today I'm just going to give you a few of my top tips. Okay, so I'm going to explain how this paper works and where I think are easy places to pick up some marks. So let's begin first of all with the difference between language and literature. So the easiest way to differentiate between these two papers is that literature is everything you've pretty much seen before. Okay, so it's Macbeth and Jekyll and Hyde on one paper, the old school stuff with an extract, and then Inspector Calls and your poetry on another paper. There will be some poems that you've not seen before, but generally speaking, in literature, you have studied those texts to death with your teacher and you know them really well. The difference with language is that this is the one that tests can you read, can you write. Okay, so this is the one where colleges, sixth forms, employers are looking to see if you have the skills to succeed later in life. Okay, so literally, can you read something you've never seen before? Can you write something? And does it make sense? And does it follow all the rules that we expect? Okay, so if we have a look at language in a little bit more detail, it starts with paper one. Okay, so paper one is all to do with fiction. That's the once upon a time image there. So you'll get an extract from a story and you'll be asked to analyse what the writer has done in that story. How they use language, how they structured it, do you agree with his opinion of it? And then in the second half of that paper, you'll be asked to write your own piece of fiction. So it might be the beginning of a story, it might just be a description of an image. So creative writing and fiction on paper one. Viewpoint writing, that we're going to be looking at for the next few lessons, however, comes on paper two. So paper two is on the very right hand side of this slide. It's called Writers' Viewpoints and Perspectives. Now in this one you'll get two texts to read that you've never seen before. Both of them are going to be articles. One of them is going to be slightly older, one of them is going to be slightly more recent. And you will again look at what the writer has done in those articles to try and inform your own piece of writing later on in the exam. So you'll look at language, you'll think about their viewpoints and how they've expressed them, and then you'll get a go at putting all that stuff into action and writing your own piece of material, a bit of non-fiction, giving us a viewpoint on some similar ideas. Okay, so both of these papers, I want to point out, are setting you up to learn from what other people have done so that you can just copy it. Okay, so they're really wanting you to do really well. They show you a good example, they make you think about what makes it a good example, and then they make you have a go at your own. Okay, so nothing should be a shock in that writing section of your English language exam. So what it's testing then is your ability to write for a certain purpose, for a certain audience, and in an appropriate form. So I'm just going to break those down for you. In terms of purpose, this means why are you writing? So the mark scheme says they might ask you to write to explain, to argue, to persuade, or to instruct or advise. Now the skills across these are pretty similar, so you will have covered these before lower down in your education, and you will definitely be doing them to death with us. Audience means who are you writing for? So it could be the readers of a broadsheet newspaper, it could be a speech for your classmates, it could be a letter to an MP. Okay, it doesn't really matter as long as you are matching your language to that setting. Okay, so it means you recognize the kind of references that would appeal to that audience, and you're probably always using suitably formal, impressive language. Finally, form means what kind of writing are you being asked to produce. So you could be asked to write a letter, a newspaper or magazine article, text for a leaflet, a speech, or an essay. So we're going to have a go at most of these examples in the forthcoming lessons. In terms of your assessment objectives then, you've got AO5 and AO6. AO5 is worth slightly more than AO6. AO5 is basically ideas and content. So have you got opinions? Can you put in the rhetorical devices that we expect to see in non-fiction? Can you structure a piece of work really well and make it hang together in a kind of cohesive way? AO6 is to do with the mechanics, okay? It's kind of the right and wrong of English language. Can you spell things correctly? Can you use punctuation correctly? Have you got a range of sentence types? That kind of thing. So I'll just give you a moment to quickly read through those bullet points. So pause this video, have a look at these bullet points that are also in your Word document for lesson 2. Okay, so what do the examiners want to see in your writing? They want to see you using language for impact. So that means sophisticated vocabulary, but also just means choosing the best word. So not necessarily the most sophisticated, but the most effective word. So maybe the more emotive word rather than the posher word. They want you to be able to give information, but also to respond to information. So like I said, you will have read some articles, And hopefully that will generate some ideas for you, and you can put those ideas into your own work and use some of your own ideas about the world, so things that we thought about last lesson. They want you to select, organise and emphasise ideas. So the order that you put your points in really matters. So at the very bare minimum, they expect to see an introduction, probably 2 or 3 paragraphs in between, and a conclusion. They want you to provide evidence. So they expect to see statistics, facts, and quotes from experts. What I would like to stress at this juncture is that none of them need to be real, okay? The joy of English is that you get to be a bit creative and make them up. In the real world, if you were a journalist and you were writing articles, please God, use things that are reliable. Please don't contribute to the fake news problem that we've got today. But in your English language exam, we do not expect you to be an expert on all subjects, so you can just make these up. And they want to see rhetorical devices. So rhetorical questions, things like alliteration, repetition, triplets, and things like that. So those are the kind of skills that we're going to look at in the coming lessons, and the kind of things that we're going to steal from other writers and have a go at putting them into our own. So here are my 3 top tips for question 5. Here are, I think, easy wins to learn and pick up loads of marks. The first one is to use the best vocabulary possible. And I say that because when I showed you AO5 and AO6, vocabulary is in both of those assessment objectives. So if in doubt, if you think, oh God, that's a really brilliant word and that would really work really well, but I'm not sure I can spell it, put it in anyway, okay? They really want your best vocabulary. The second thing is to use a range of punctuation. So this image here with an exclamation mark, a comma, a full stop, speech marks, and a question are the things that I think are a bare minimum that we could all probably put in. And I'm going to show you in the coming lessons how to use them all. Finally, it's important that you write enough, okay? So that's why it's really important that you read those articles, you pinch some of their ideas, and I'm going to show you 2 strategies that I think will help you write enough, okay? So let's break these 3 tips down. So firstly, how are you going to get the best vocab into your writing? The first one, which I'm guessing you can all see coming, is that you need to read, okay? I'm sure your English teachers have told you this a lot. I'm sure all your teachers have told you this, but the best way to improve your vocabulary in the way that you speak and write is by reading that vocabulary. And not only is that going to help you understand the stuff that you read in section A of the exam and know what that writer's talking about, but it's going to make you sound cleverer and pick up more marks in section B. So I can't stress it enough. Make sure you are reading. Anything at all, anything with words, we will accept. It could be fiction, non-fiction. Find something that you love and read it. Get into bed 30 minutes earlier on the night time and take your book. Get to the library. Mr. Ellis is a saviour, a god and a saint. He will help you find something that you love, I promise. Okay, so the next way to get good vocabulary into your work is to steal. So magpie some really posh words from those articles in section A. Okay, so everything that we read from now on, you're going to be stealing some vocabulary from and trying to use it in your own work. The third way is that some of you are probably using Microsoft Word. And I think the best invention for a lot of us on Microsoft Word is something called synonyms. So this means words that mean the same but might actually sound better. So if I just show you what this looks like, this is a kind of freeze frame from your booklet. So let's open that booklet. Here is the first thing that you're going to read next lesson, and it talks about corruption, okay? Now, if I thought I'd use the word corrupts too much, or I thought that sounds good, but it's only 2 syllables, can I get anything better? Then I could right-click that word, and I could click on synonyms, and it would give me different options. Now, I like that word debases. I think that sounds really good. And look, we've got another one there that says degrades, and already I can see a bit of alliteration coming out here. So this is a really useful tool. So if you're going to do your writing for these lessons, admittedly not in your exam, on a Word document, then make use of the tools that you've got. So use synonyms to make yourself sound clever. If, however, you read it back and think, God, that word absolutely does not fit in there at all, then take it back out and put the original, okay? Make sure it still makes sense. But use the tools that you've got. Hopefully this will build your vocabulary and you'll be retaining those in your memory for when you come back to write by hand in school. Okay, so my second top tip then was to use a range of punctuation. And here are 3 things that I think you can get in any piece of writing that will help you get your punctuation in. We can all use a rhetorical question. I'm going to give you a little tutorial on how to do a good one later on, but we can all get a rhetorical question with a question mark on the end. The second way I think is really good to get punctuation in is to quote an expert. Now, this one is pretty obvious in that it gives you some speech marks, doesn't it? So here's my example. As Professor Ali Smith of Oxford University claims, there's no better way of improving vocabulary than reading. Buzzing. I've got a question mark and I've got speech marks. But if I get that right, I actually get 3 bits of punctuation in there, don't I? So firstly, I get the comma before I use my speech marks. I get the full stop before I close my speech marks, and then I get the speech marks. So 3 in 1 for quoting an expert. I can't recommend it enough. Okay, so currently we're on 4 different bits of punctuation. Finally, the semicolon. If you are confident on semicolons, you don't even need to look at the next slide. If you are nervous about them, please do. If you are very nervous about them, have a go at writing your own sentence with semicolons in after you've done the next slide. So, to me, the easiest cheat way to get a semicolon into your writing is just by joining up 2 short sentences. But the rule is they must be on the same topic. Okay, you can't be joining willy-nilly sentences, one about a cat and one about a dog, if they've got nothing in common. Okay, they need to be on the same topic. So, here are 2 facts about tons of plastic and how it's kind of changed over the years. In 1950, the world's population of 2.5 billion produced 1.5 million tons of plastic. In 2016, a global population of more than 7 billion people produced over 320 million tons of plastic. Because they are independent clauses, so they'll make sense on their own, you could separate them with a full stop like I have here. However, because they're on the same topic, you can just join them with a semicolon and get loads of marks off the examiner. Amazing. The rule is, though, you can't do it with a conjunction after. Okay, so I couldn't put and in 2016 or yet in 2016. Basically, that semicolon replaces whatever word you would put there. Okay, so you don't need the word that would join them together, just use that punctuation mark. So if you're a bit nervous or you want a little kind of turn of this skill, just pause this video and see if you can write 2 short sentences on the same topic, do it about Macbeth, use your ideas from last lesson, join them together with a semicolon and no conjunction. Okay, my final tip then is to write enough. And the reason I put this is that you have to show a range of ideas to get up the mark scheme, but also you need to show that you can order your ideas so you can write in enough paragraphs. Okay, so I think there are 2 main ways of doing this, and these are my 2 strategies. The zoom out approach, so starting on a really small detail and zooming out to the rest of the world, or the so what approach, where you just keep asking yourself, so what, who cares, why should I care about that, why does that matter? And you keep making it kind of worse and worse. Worst case scenario, future kind of a destruction, if you will. So I'm just going to show you 2 of these at play. And if you've still got time in this hour's lesson, I want you to give the one a go that you think is probably the most useful for you. So here is my zoom out approach. So I start small with an anecdote about one person or maybe a recent news story. So I'm going to start with my own personal story that I've made up about plastic pollution. Last week, I collected 20 plastic bottles on the beach during one dog walk. 20. The beach was littered with them, like maroon fish made of plastic. They smothered the sand, reflecting painful shards of sunlight into my eyes, but were only a mere hint of the scale of the disaster in the water beyond. So really small scale me on my beach with my dog. Then I'm going to zoom out to the UK. According to a recent study conducted by the government, the UK's seas are polluted with plastic to a dangerous extent in levels that hinder fishing and compromise the health of our wildlife. Britain contributes a shameful 1.7 tonnes of plastic to our oceans annually. Now that I've done the UK, I'm going to zoom out to the rest of the world. In fact, 8 million pieces of plastic finds its way onto our oceans daily. Between 8 to 14 million tonnes enters our ocean every year. The weight of these statistics is literally and emotionally crushing. We will soon be drowning in plastic. Sadly, our sea creatures already are. So starting small and getting big, there's your zoom out. Here's how you do the so what. So you state your point in as much detail as possible. Plastic pollution is ruining our beaches. Not only is litter an eyesore and potentially dangerous, but it's ruining the health of our environment and killing our wildlife. Then I need to answer the question, so what? So what if it's killing our wildlife? If we continue at this rate, Greenpeace has warned, the human race will be responsible for the extinction of 15 species of sea life. We stand to lose the variety of species that makes life on our planet so fascinating and enjoyable. I'm making this up, guys. Finally, you've got to ask yourself, so what about that point? So what if we're losing all that wildlife? Without this sea life, we will interrupt the food chains of birds and mammals that rely on the oceans for their food, causing further extinction. At this rate, we'll soon be left with just our cats and dogs, providing, of course, that Tibbles isn't keen on tuna. With so many animals at risk, it won't be long before our own food chains are seriously disrupted, and competition for food amongst an ever-growing population turns nasty. So, if you've still got some time for your English lesson today, have a go at either that so what approach or the zooming out approach. Write me a paragraph about anything you like. If you're stuck, do it on plastic pollution.